Welcome to part 3 of the 3-part episode about mind traps. This is the I Care About You podcast, and today, as I said, we're discussing mind traps. For the sake of this series, the mind traps we are talking about are the beliefs you have that govern your choices and decision making. They can also affect your views of people and the world. They are beliefs that we think are truths, but they are most often due to internal biases that we have, experiences, and past events. So we talked a lot about internal biases in the last 2 episodes, the last 2 parts, and we'll be talking about another type today. Before we dive into it, I would like to let you know that my book, Reasons to Live, A Guide to Practices that Support Healing Beyond Suicidal Thoughts and Emotional Overwhelm, is coming out in September. Can you believe it? It's being published by Mango Publishing's imprint, Books That Save Lives. I'll put a pre-order link in the description. Please pre-order. It really helps me get the word out about this important book. And if you know anybody who think might benefit from the book, please forward the link to them. Okay, so here we go. Parts 1 and 2, we discussed different types of biases, and today we're going to discuss other types of thinking traps. Thinking traps are patterns of thought, usually with a negative flavor. They prevent us from seeing things in other ways or through different lenses. Otherwise known as cognitive distortions, thinking traps are often deeply ingrained in our subconscious mind. So here are a few cognitive distortions that affect how you view things. 1, the all or nothing approach. This occurs when you can't see the shades of gray in a situation. For example, if you don't get a job, you may feel like no one wants you and you aren't employable. A more realistic way of thinking might be to consider all the factors that went into what happened and to realize that life isn't perfect and that many factors go into all the things that happen in life. Maybe some facts weren't about you at all. Number 2, thinking that you know what the other person is thinking. This is all about making assumptions about what people think or perceive without finding out from them. We often do this when we assume people feel a certain way about us, like when we were children and our parents were disappointed and we felt that they didn't love us anymore and they were really disappointed in us. This is kind of an assumption way of thinking about what other people are thinking, when in reality, maybe they aren't thinking anything at all, or didn't even notice, or thinking something totally different. 3, this is kind of a related one, making assumptions. We usually make negative assumptions throughout the day without actually realizing it. Like when someone cuts in line at the grocery store, we might think that person's a jerk. When someone makes a bad move while driving, we might think they're a bad driver or again a jerk. We do this all the time because they are quick pathways to understanding why people do what they do. When you find yourself assuming, you can do 2 things. Either talk to the person directly, and if that's not possible, say to yourself, there are many reasons why the person did that. Not all of them are bad or mean. I've done some of those things myself, and I'm not a bad or mean person. Number 4, letting your emotions overtake your understanding of the situation. This is where you let your emotions govern your thoughts. I'm guilty of this often. You let thinking like, I feel bad about something, become an eternal belief that you must be a bad person, something of that nature, or just letting any kind of emotion about the situation govern what you're going to do. Often we do this in anger, or if we're very, very upset, we might lash out and say things or feel about a situation that if we had time to reflect on it and really weigh it out, we might end up thinking differently about it altogether. Number 5, forecasting the future. We all do this, and people sometimes refer to this as a self-fulfilling prophecy type belief system. If you think that you'll fail, then you will scenario. You can work through this by finding a balance in the thinking. Things like, I could bomb this interview, but if I prepare for it, I might hit a home run. Many outcomes are possible, and there is a lot to say about positive affirmations before you do something. I am not talking about being overly optimistic to the point of toxicity, but rather to find a balance between the two, to be able to weigh them out, and to not always think the absolute worst. Number 6, this one's huge. We all do it. It's very damaging. Judgment. Judgment is a quick tool to find an understanding of something or someone. We all use this to categorize things and to understand them quickly. And sometimes it's beneficial, but oftentimes judgment is too one-sided. Taking judgment too far can be really limiting. Judging people on appearances or brief encounters doesn't tell the whole story about who they are. Judging yourself too harshly doesn't allow for growth, self-compassion, and change. It's easy to see when you are making a judgment call, so just step back from the harsh criticism and remind yourself that judgments are not truths. They're just judgments. And you can have a different judgment if you so chose, or a different impression of a person. 7, Overthinking. This is an obsession type thing. When something happens, you kind of obsess about it, and you do that so much that you can no longer see the situation clearly. I do this a lot when I do something at work that I think later was probably not the best choice. Then I overthink it, and usually employing many other things we are talking about today. I might apply judgments about myself and my abilities. I might negatively forecast what's going to happen because I'm obsessing over this one situation that might not have been that big of a deal, but the obsession makes it into something bigger than it is. 8. Overgeneralizing. This is when you think something that happened once is a permanent state of being. If you made a bad move in traffic, maybe that means you're a bad driver forever. You might think bad things always happen to you and you can't catch a break. This is really part of overgeneralizing things that happen in your life. 9. Thinking everything relates to you. This looks like taking the blame for things that aren't your fault, but it can also look like putting your personal stories on top of other people's stories rather than spending time listening to what they have to say and to deeply understand that their experience might be different than yours, even if some characteristics of the story you can relate to in your own life. This leads to never thinking too deeply about what others are saying, and always because you're so fixated on just telling your own story and how it relates to what they are saying. So you don't take the time to really understand why that thing was important to the person. Rather, you're just waiting to tell your own story, and you use your stories on top of their stories to decide how they feel rather than really listening to them. 10. Clinging to old views that no longer serve you. We often do this when our beliefs are from caregivers or a dogma we grew up with. We tend to view all of life through this lens of what would my parents or the church or my classmates or teachers or friends think, rather than the lens of how do I feel about this, or what do I want my life to look like? 11. Catastrophic thinking. This is when you blow everything up into something bigger and more upsetting than it is. Oftentimes, obsession might play a role here, right? But it's part of overthinking and is associated with anxiety. A lot of people will refer to this as a person's drama when they're taking something and catastrophizing it. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but they're turning it into something catastrophic when it's not really as big as they're making it out to be. 12. Imposter syndrome. So we've talked about this in other podcasts, and I'll probably do a future podcast on it, but this is when you think that you are not good at what you do, are not knowledgeable, and that you will be found out at some time and either fired, or someone will break up with you or not want to be your friend again, or whatever the context of the relationship is. You feel like you're not good enough to be there and you don't know enough and you're a fraud. This is a big phenomenon in marginalized groups. It initially began when women started to enter the workforce as a way of keeping them in place. So why do I bring up all these mind traps? Because they shape how you see the world and yourself. It's freeing to know that nothing is a truth in life. It is all part of the way you go about understanding the world. So how can you keep mind traps in check? 1, give some thought to what your mind traps might be. What are the signs you see when you're participating in one of your mind traps? When you notice yourself falling into the trap, say to yourself, stop, I don't do this anymore. Now I looked at all the factors objectively, or whatever it might be, and then shift into that new way of being. When you find yourself obsessing and overthinking, stop again and change the process. Maybe do something like listen to music or a podcast to shift your thoughts. Meditation is a great tool here. It does take a little bit of practice, but you'll be amazed at how much it helps when you start obsessing and overthinking. 3, realizing your life isn't perfect. You're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We all have regrets. You aren't alone. We all have disappointments, and it's okay. It's normal. It's how life is. 4, play the devil's advocate with yourself. Ask yourself what the pros and cons are. What are other ways of looking at this? What are the other outcomes that could happen? What are the other reasons why things happen? Explore all the different reasonings as to why something may have occurred. 5, get support from a friend or family member who you feel is objective so that you can bounce the scenario off of them and get another point of view. Be your own BFF. This is really important in everything you're going to do in life. Talk to yourself as you would a good friend and someone you love. Work to shift your internal dialogue into something more supportive and helpful, more constructive, more objective. 7, Be kind, compassionate, and loving to yourself. This is a good opportunity to shift internal beliefs and feelings of worthlessness. By realizing your mind traps, you can let go of some of the things that don't really serve you. It isn't an easy process, but it is possible. And when I say it isn't easy, it's totally doable. It just takes a little determination and sticking with it. Make a ritual for yourself to let go of negative beliefs if that helps. Write it down on a piece of paper, read it aloud and observe it. And then say to it out loud, "Thank you, but I don't need you anymore." And then throw it away or burn it, rip it into 100 pieces, bury it in the yard, whatever your ritual is, whatever you need to do to let those things go. I often, before I do yoga or start the day, I work with those things and say to myself, I don't do this anymore. I'm not going to do this today. I can let you go. You don't serve me. And it's really been helpful, and it's a very easy way to create a ritual that you do every day. And over time, it just becomes your way of being because you're saying it to yourself every day and reinforcing that new belief. 8, be good to yourself. Change takes time. Keep going, but realize that you are human, and that means you're not perfect. Perfection doesn't exist, and that's totally okay. 9, remember the balance is the key. Be mindful of when you fall into a negative spiral or become overly optimistic that you can't make safe choices. Just remember that everything is a balance. There's pros and cons to everything. There's different opinions about everything. There's different views on everything. And remember to just keep that balance and harmony in your life. And 10, redirect when you need to. Back up, shift, pivot, whatever you need to do. Just do it and don't think about what other people think. It's okay to stop and think, to wait, to ask yourself, what am I doing? Is this the right thing? Should I sleep on this before I decide? Knowing these mind traps also helps you to be a better communicator. Knowing mind traps of others will help you choose words and communication styles so that you can better be heard. You can preface a sentence with things like, I do not think this is an absolute. There are many ways of looking at this problem that we're talking about. Things like that. So mind traps are a part of life. A faster-paced lifestyle is more likely to create more mind traps because you aren't taking the time to think about everything objectively or clearly. You may need to slow down. Another mind trap just might be your thoughts that if you slow down, you're not going to be as productive or valuable. Realize that this is also a mind trap. I mean, Ed Sheeran himself doesn't even have a cell phone anymore. Slowing down is a superpower many people use to stay grounded. So if you need it, use it, even if it's taking an hour out of a week to slow down, or doing something slower, or taking a walk, or not engaging in as much social media as normal. Whatever it is for you, find a way to slow down so that you can slow your thoughts down and think about things in different, more thoughtful, deeper ways. For now, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Don't forget to pre-order my book and pass it on to those that need it. And know that I love you and I support you. So take care, and I'll see you later.